UFC will close out the month of January back on Fox from Denver, Colorado, as welterweights Donald Cerrone and Jorge Masvidal will meet. It will be Donald Cerrone with the 1-inch reach that he has given up to Masvidal, who walks in with a 74-inch reach for the 32-year-old. Very intriguing fight at welterweight. Donald Cerrone had an unbelievable year in 2016, going 4-0. Masvidal, winner of his last two fights as well, and this was a fight that Masvidal has been calling for a number of months at this point, and Cerrone said he was up for fighting immediately after the Matt Brown victory, and this one was signed for Denver.
I can't even believe this fight is going down. Two super seasoned, experienced, skilled guys, and that's what we're going to see. The question is, can Masvidal, one of the things we've seen from him is when he's down and he loses fights, he can't push it to that next level. We've seen Donald Cerrone, when Donald Cerrone hits his stride and he understands he's in charge, he really is in charge. And yeah, you can clip him and you can hurt him, but you can't let Donald Cerrone find his groove. Can Masvidal get to the point where he doesn't let Donald Cerrone get comfortable?
Yeah, he's different, man. I am working on a breakdown of Jorge Masvidal. For some reason, he's one of the most underappreciated but spectacular fighters. The way that he floats between zones and between ranges and between choices, it's super, super efficient and smooth. And he's very different, very hard to predict. Look at him playing here in the open space. He's just a very unique fighter, super slick, super, super slick. So it's been a real pleasure to go back and look at his body of work, and I really want people to see how spectacular this fighter is.
When you're looking at the transformation that Donald Cerrone has made so seamlessly, typically when we see fighters go up in weight, such as Cerrone did after his lightweight campaign, which was pretty stellar, sometimes there's a big adjustment period. For Donald Cerrone, this looks like the perfect weight class for him. He's been able to transfer those skills, and on top of that, I mean, he looks rather big in there with some other welterweights as well. It just seems that Donald Cerrone has been able to take a lot of the gifts he had at 155 and add to it at welterweight. And looking at this particular fight, John, we might not be that far away from Donald Cerrone being right at the top of that 170-pound division and talking about a title fight.
100%. When you're looking at stars in the UFC, and you know, if you're trying to get the most eyeballs humanly possible, you want Donald Cerrone to be at the top of that list, challenging for a title. This guy constantly wears a cowboy hat, drinking Bud, dropping F-bombs. People
after your own heart.
It is true. And then on top of that, when the cage door closes, very few people in the history of mixed martial arts put on the type of show that Donald Cerrone puts on. And I was a non-believer from him going from 155 pounds up to 170. Yeah, Cowboy Oliveira, he was 155 pounds too. It's what he was able to do to Patrick Cote, who fought for the 185-pound title and fought Tito Ortiz at 205 pounds. Nobody's ever done this to Pat Cote. And then what he was able to do to both Matt Brown and Rick Story, I believe that he could be challenging for the UFC 170-pound champion.
I mean, he's always been spectacularly talented. I talked to Greg Jackson after the fight, and he said the guy truly is a genius in his ability to express combat. I really think the weight improved him to a great deal. His challenges have sometimes been psychological, like game day performing. And to be able to perform that way, not going in and cutting all that weight and dealing with the extra pressure and the extra sort of ornery nature that you get cutting weight, he's been able to go in and have fun and throwing footballs around when he was in Ottawa with the Red Blacks, they're called, with the Ottawa Red Blacks. And, you know, we see him going in the days, we've been around him a few times over that year, and he's just so chilled. And that's not what the old 155-pound Donald Cerrone was like. And he and Greg Jackson credit his performance to some of that.
And he also says, you know, now he's got a handle. He said, once my mental game was there, I can just go out and perform and be free. And Cerrone's one of these guys. It doesn't matter if he wins or loses. People like Donald Cerrone because he's an action fighter. And the fact is that even if he does lose, he always puts on sensational performances. So the paying audience, they know that they can get their money's worth with Cowboy.
The greats sometimes can't explain to you how they perform, but the guys who have had trouble and haven't always been able to nail it performance-wise like Donald Cerrone can, they understand if they're thinking too much, they don't perform like these performances we see here from Donald. It's when they go out and they program themselves for combat and go out and let it happen. And Donald Cerrone is like that. Jorge Masvidal is like that. And this is just an absolutely spectacular fight. We all know how good Donald is, but I don't think we all quite appreciate how special Jorge Masvidal is. And he is. It's the super fluidity. It's the style of fluid nature that he has. The way that he's never set into a certain position. There's never a mandatory choice that he has to make. He's able to choose almost any option at any time. It's that fluidity that makes him unique. Yeah, he can wrestle and grapple and strike and all of that, but it's the way that he's fluid within the fight, and that's something that Donald hasn't faced at 170 pounds yet.
And I feel that Masvidal, he's someone that, I'm with you, doesn't always get that appreciation. This is a guy that lost a narrow split to Lorenz Larkin, and look what Larkin has done since that fight. And even his last outing with Jake Ellenberger, so many people just focused on the foot getting caught at the end and negated what Masvidal was doing up until that point, and getting full credit for that win in the last time we saw him.
Yeah, and that's the thing about Masvidal, is he just understands how to perform, and sometimes he's just so calm and smooth in there. Maybe the casual fans just can't understand exactly what he's doing.
It's almost tricky to even describe as you're seeing it. Somehow he's swimming out there, if that makes sense. He's a very unique fighter. I'm really excited for this breakdown.
Next week, John Ramdian will be hosting a special 3-hour look at the career of Donald Cerrone, the Cowboy Code. Check your listings here on Fight Network next week.